think the precedence has been set in the past, Mr. McCoy and Ms. Hines, I mean, you're gonna use it for what you're using it for education, correct?
That's the only thing that it can be used for.
That's correct, especially based on, for the last 2 years, I've got a letter, myself and the mayor of the town has, in reference to, what that property had on the game on the historical basis. And,
Could I say one thing about the motion I made? The only reason I made it in the context that was presented to us is that we don't have any discretion as to what restrictions are put on that piece of property. We don't make that call. It's 9 elected officials that's on the Board of Education that makes that call. This board should not get involved with how the policies and procedures of that board. They're gonna decide what they're gonna do with that property. That should be their concern. They're elected officials just like us. That's not in our jurisdiction to start deciding how and what that board does. That's their job. I don't need any more headaches and fights about what's going on with someone else's decision. That's their decision. Clearly theirs, it's not ours.
hold on a minute, Mr. Carter. I think that they're protected under the request that you've asked and the stipulations on the property that's been done all over anyway. So I think for what your request is, you're protected in that. You feel comfortable with that?
Yes, because it will only be used for education.
Exactly. Right. Any further discussion?
Yeah, if Mr. Cogdell would have been listening, that's what I said to start with. We don't have no say-so in this because we have no need for the building. If we had a need for the building, we could take the building, but we don't have no need for it. But I do think, I speak for myself, as a city commissioner, I do think I need to at least request that if it ever ceased to be used for educational, it reverts back to the Board of Education. Because if it don't, if they give it you free and clear, and just for example, something happened to the charter school and enrollment dropped, then you're no longer a charter school, and you could sell that, land.
No, it's not there. It's not the Polo Brown.
No.
It's for the Poconos.
Yeah, but they can
There's
sell the land.
two different organizations. We're talking about Bladen County Youth Focus Project, not Paul R. Brown Leadership Academy.
Yeah.
Bladen County Youth Focus Project owns all of the other property and
Right.
buildings out there.
They're not-
And we are wanting to own the Extended Hope Building, Bladen County Youth Focus, not Paul R. Brown Leadership Academy.
I understand that, but it's being used for Paul R. Brown Leadership Academy.
Yes.
The extended hope is. And I just want, all I'm asking for, I don't have no problem you getting the land. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm saying the stipulation that I would like for us as county commissioners to ask the Board of Education to consider putting that stipulation in there that if you ever cease for what you're using it for, it reverts back to the county. That's where every property's been done in Blaine County.
That's fine.
That's all I'm saying.
And it's already said there
It
like
will
that.
not see, it will
No, we gotta
only be
understand
used
they
for
want to remove
educational
all of it.
purposes.
Yes, it is.
But I want to ask one thing here while we sitting here going through this. We got an attorney sitting right over there, Mr. Johnson, he's the attorney. And I'm gonna ask him this question. Can we legally determine who and how that property, I mean, the school board determine
I
who
think-
legally deeds that property? Who does it?
I think that your first issue that you have at hand here is just to determine whether or not you guys want to release your right to purchase it. Now, if you want to make that vote, but then attach perhaps Charles Ray's suggestion, I think you can do that, but I don't think that you have the right in order, the county does not have the right to.
I did not say.
And I agree with you, Charles, you didn't say that, you just, that was your
I mean,
request.
I didn't say that, Cogdell.
I'm asking the legal person.
I said, I request
Just be
that,
patient, one at a
I
time.
request that as a county commissioner. I know we can't tell the Board of
That's right.
Education what to do, I said that to start with.
I'm not getting into it about, Charles, what you're saying about your request. I'm asking him the legal perspective of it, so I'll understand the legal realms of it. That's what I was asking him, the legal perspective of where it's going. We can sit here and request anything we want to. Legally, all we doing is requesting, but the decision is made through the school board. Am I right or wrong?
Correct.
Correct, right? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'd like for Mr. Martin to research, was there any stipulation placed on the Spalding Monroe and the Historical Society? Was there any stipulation in there?
Yes, sir.
I would think that there were, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes,
and
sir.
Mr. Bullock, if I may, just for clarification or context. the information that you have, the deed that you have at your
Right.
place, that was just there, we placed that there for, as a helpful information. If you'll notice that the request is that the property be deeded with no option to be returned to the county. Well, it's not the county, it will be the Board of Education.
Right.
But we place that there so that you can have, an example of how previous deeds
That's correct.
have
Well,
been stated.
and I don't have a problem with these. I mean, this, they already, so this is not the one, this is the other part.
That was from last year, yes,
It's the
they've
old
already
part.
had 2 parcels deeded
Gotcha.
so far,
Okay.
and those are examples of the conditions. That it be maintained for recreational or civic purposes, and if not, then it reverts back to Board of Education.
Yeah, it goes back to the Board of Education, not to the county.
That's
That's
right.
right. That was just to give you an example of what they're
Okay.
talking about.
So they don't have one yet, and that's what the need has to be drawn.
Correct.
And before the Board of Education can get rid of it, we have to be given first choice.
You guys, that's correct.
Okay, okay. I see what
Check those bits.
Any further
Stipulation.
discussion?
I think that's why I gave you an example.
So they're voting on the
Small road,
original.
historical building, and the.
All in favor say aye.
you're
Oh, I
Opposed?
got a substitute
Wait a
motion.
minute, wait a minute.
We voted on
saying. You can't vote yours. You can't vote anything else because you did the vote. You did the,
On the first motion,
that's what I'm saying.
Did anyone second Charles Ray?
Everybody didn't have a second,
Got
Charles.
first.
Anybody second my motion?
No, it died for lack of second.
I'll check.
That's a new motion.
okay. We got the first motion is accepted as the presentation.
You got the vote on Charles Ray.
Right, we got to do the first motion.
Substitute motion.
Yeah. All right, we got a substitute motion by Mr.
So
Peterson.
I'm still confused though about this. I'm really like, I don't understand. Are we doing anything different than what is actually in there?
Oh, this is a new deed, that's what he's telling you. This is,
Yeah,
that was
that's
for the
what-
The
old
only
side.
thing I'm requesting different than they're asking for is that we ask the Board of Education to consider putting that stipulation in there. If it ever ceases to be used for what this group wants to use it for, it will revert back to the Board of Education. That's the only thing I'm changing. It don't change the use of the facility, it don't change nothing.
The length of the time to
Unless
use it or?
they just, it just dissolves, and then it would come back to the Board of Education versus being sold.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying, and I'm just requesting, I know we can't do it, I'm requesting that.
No, that, I mean, that's good. I mean,
Okay, we got a, on the subsequent, we got, Mr. Peterson made a motion. We had a second by Mr. Dallas. Any further discussion on it? We got to do the subsequent
Oh,
first.
okay.
And,
Essentially, Charles, if everybody understands, so Greg and I can understand. Essentially, it's the exact same motion. We're just adding that language in there, just that you're requesting the Board of
and see,
Education
my
to
thing,
consider.
my,
That's all.
tell me wrong, counsel, if I'm wrong. That stipulation's already in there, isn't it? I mean, if it's used for any other intent, it automatically reverts back
That was a deed from other property last year that transferred.
on the gym
Right.
and all.
The Board of Education has that right, which,
And
Yeah, right.
Can I ask you, did the board approve that? You saying they asked that of the board? Did they vote on yes or no?
The Board of Education? I don't know what it's
I don't,
about.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
You just request.
The first 2 deeds that we have, there is an option in there that states that if the property is not used for what it's being used for, that it would revert back to the Board of Education. That's fine. That's all we want. It doesn't matter, because we're not gonna stop using it for what it's being used for. Because it was being used before the Paul R. Brown Leadership Academy got there. We're using it for
Right.
after-school programs and everything else.
So based on what she's saying, it falls right in line with what his request
I mean, it
is.
doesn't matter, put the request in there. We just want
That's
the
correct.
property, and it will never be used for anything but educational purposes, because the person that donated the property, 1928, said that's what it can be used
That's
for.
right.
Only, used for educational purposes.
Thank you.
Now we got a motion by Charles, and a second, Mr. Dallas. favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. So the, ayes have it. We got 8-1, Madam Clerk. All right, Ms. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving to item C, the board has a request from Bladen's Bloom and Agro Industrial for a financial contribution related to the new business incubator located in the old post office facility here in Whiskey County. You all may recall that funds have been set aside for economic development purposes.
Right.
So if you are inclined to make an appropriation, I would recommend that it come from that money that's already earmarked for that purpose. It would still require an additional budget amendment, but we at least know where the funds would be coming from.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Question.
We got a motion by Ms. Peterson, a second by Ms. Trivett. Discussion.
I just have a question though. Do we get the financial, investment initially by, Bladen Bloom? And how much, I know we have the money set aside already. I just like to know how much money's been spent. Do we have access to that information?
None of that money has been spent.
I didn't say from us. I
Okay.
said, your comment was that we have the money set aside and they're asking for financial contribution. I'm just asking and we're asking how much the
Oh.
amount is set aside and what percentage is that of the cost?
Okay, and this wasn't stated, so the recommended amount is $10,000. And, there's what, 1.9,
That's
I
what I
think was the
want to know.
initial
Yeah,
amount.
and
So it's a very small,
Yeah,
very
it
small
makes sense to
fraction.
me.
Dr. Moore, let me add to that since I'm on that board to help us all be informed. And, believe me, I watch every penny discussion on there. Cause my recommendation is actually something else. You got all the library traffic there, and that parking lot is basically our parking lot to the left, from my understanding, which needs to be paved. But when you got the library and what the incubator's gonna be used for, which is a good thing, and a lot of tenants, and I think we have like 5 or 6 already ready to go in there. But, with the library parking and trying to police and patrol the people from the courthouse overrunning on it, there's an area right behind the post office to the library that has never been really maintained properly. There's a few little trees and all. My suggestion due to consider parking, because that's gonna be an issue.
Okay.
Especially when the employees that's gonna work in that building have to park too. My recommendation was to pave all that behind it and put the people working in there back in there.
Okay.
And, so that's still something, Greg, that's probably in consideration, but keeping in mind the money that we've already budgeted for Bladen Blooming, anything that would have to be spent has to come out of that money that's been set aside.
But I guess when I read the letter, it didn't say amount, and I just want to know how much
It says,
contribution we're talking about, and you gave me the answer.
And it's gonna be an exciting center. Your college business department is gonna be there, the head of the business, the chamber, and all other kind of folks are gonna be in there.
Okay.
Well, in the information in the agenda, it just gave an amount of recommended at $10,000. I just want to be sure that was, if anybody else on the board didn't say that,
Right.
it was in.
And just for the citizens to know, and some of the commissioners may not know, one of the main focuses of that building, and that's a new word that's used all over the country now, incubator. And the first thing I know, what in the world is this, you know? But when you come up with a new business, whether you're a bookkeeper, or a tax person, insurance, or whatever the case may be, without having all the financial responsibility of a freestanding building yourself, you can go in there and lease a room with a maximum time that's been set up of about 3 years. And then you have to be looking elsewhere, but you have to pay for that room, obviously. But it's to give you a chance to start your new business, but then with expectations, you got to get out after a certain period of time to make room for somebody else. And so it's a good thing. It is, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. That's, I'm sorry. We also have, the NCACC federal legislative goals process is beginning. You all, many of you have attended the national meeting in March the Legislative Goals Conference in Washington DC. The North Carolina Association has an opportunity for counties to submit goals of statewide interest at the at the federal level. And so we just wanted to give you an opportunity, bring that to your attention, give you an opportunity if you know of anything that you'd like to submit. The deadline is, the 16th, which is before we meet again. So if anyone has, just, if you want to let us know, or if anybody has anything.
I think one thing we all ought to think about, I'd like to mention to you to put in your mind, I think, we've just witnessed Bladenboro and other communities that were disastrous 2 years ago, and this has played a very big, bearing on whether they're gonna rebuild or reopen, because 2 years have passed, and they hadn't had assistance or help from the previous storm, and now are facing this after now. I think we should request a stipulation from the federal government and FEMA that a timetable should be set, because the money becomes available and then gets stagnant setting somewhere, like again in Raleigh probably, from what I understand, before it ever gets dispersed. And I think the federal government needs to have a little more authority on that and push to see that people are helped quicker and sooner. And we can come up with a time frame on it, but I don't think that's too much to ask. If we owe them, they come up with real quick and pay you, you got so many days. But I think that should be a priority.
And we did a similar one at the state level for, that type thing as well. Let's go.
Anybody else?
I have a question, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the update on the, senior moment?
All right, Diana.
About the, Board of Education, about getting schools, update from schools.
We did, as you know, we worked on that for about a year, and we've had perfect, good response. Mr. Martin, myself, and our building inspector, as well as the main gentleman in Raleigh, Mr. Martin can tell you his name, we had a conference call. We can, meaning we, when I say that, the school board, they can build buildings like Emerald. In other words, have been thinking we had to stick with a $30 million building for 700 students for middle school. And as long as there's not a cafeteria or a gym, then you would have to make other provisions for it. But as long as we're not having to consider that, like if we're in an area right now, say Clarkson or Tar Heel, that we have those facilities, then we can build buildings like Emerald at a tune, if that, say if that figures $4.5 million, then we can build a $4.5 million building instead of $30 million.
But how do you have a school without food, cafeteria? That's what you're saying, just,
Didn't you go back and make provisions, but you're still not at that $30 million.
okay.
But we're talking firewalls
Right,
and
that's
additional
it.
things.
Okay.
But it has been determined what my approach was, that I know the state's not gonna allow anyone to build a building that would not be safe for students. And that was the argument that we used, the charter school, do it. And, based on the building codes, and a lot of that, to be honest with you, was in there, but nobody had done the research, and correct me, Mr. Martin, if I'm wrong, to see that what we actually could do, but we brought a lot of attention to the state by asking the questions. To be honest with you, the governor was ecstatic about it. I mean, tell me where the blocks are so we can knock them out. I have to tell you, that's what he said. And I had personal contact with him twice. And our legislators, our senators, in other words, everybody's on board, not just, and we use the approach for our rural areas, and there's a lot of rural areas, but we can build affordable schools, and that helps us, puts us as commissioners in a better way to be able to assist school boards.
My second one, the DOT pickup of debris in Kelly, what's the update on that?
I haven't heard an update in the
November.
past week or two. Yeah, November is the latest we heard, and that is because they had to do a formal bidding process before they could let the contract. So hopefully it'll be in the very near future, and I'll be glad to contact Ken Clark.
Can you let us know if you have an update?
And you know, disappointed on that thing, Mr. Martin, I just heard today on the news, it was either Brunswick or New Hanover County, like tomorrow is their last day to have
Yes.
it picked up.
They didn't pick
Oh,
up
really?
all the time.
And we've been sitting here thinking it was a 40-day, or a 30-day, or 40 days, bidding process.
Well, I've been seeing on the news that you gotta really pick it up,
Yeah.
so I don't see why we're so
And
late.
if one of those counties tomorrow is like the last day.
Yep.
Okay.
And the last one on the signs, the DOT, can they go around, when they go around, some of the signs, I know in Keller, East Arcadia, and in between Carver Street, I think, some of the signs, DOT, state signs, or leaning, yeah, and they're, right, as well as, potholes. Who do I call?
I'll contact Ken Clark.
Thank you.
So state signs and potholes. Okay.
I know they fixed one in, on Kennedy Store Road, but it's a hole now,
Okay.
after the rain.
And the road is, the highway is roading that on
Yeah.
242, on
So-
242 south. Hmm? Mm-hmm. It's bad.
Take that up.
Yeah, the actual
And
top.
the last thing would be on those, dumpster sites. Do they just go back periodically and check like monthly, or they wait for someone to file a complaint? Or the water, again, fall, to settle in some of the dumpster sites?
And that potholes and all.
Yeah, and people would, yeah, after the, trash and all that.
Is that at East Arcadia?
That's one of them. But I had some other concerns over in Kelly too.
Okay. I know they just were inundated with rain, and
Yeah.
so, I'll talk to Kim about that as well.
I get the same call, Greg, I call Greg.
Now, there's several, we put money in the budget,
I know.
first of all, for paving, the parking lot beside the library you mentioned earlier, as well as paving several sites, I think it may be 5, that have the most problems with, holding standing water and just problems related to, the drive, so,
They did come bring something to fill in those holes.
right,
But guess what? After rain
Yeah.
and traffic,
it washes away.
yeah, it washed away.
Mr. Dallas?
One at, intersection of 41 and Twisted Gate, we really need some work done to it. People getting out and having bog up and it's a mess.
Okay. Thank you.
Got a motion by Mr., yes, sir.
Mr. Martin, gentleman asked me about they were repairing a house and they want a dumpster. I don't know what to put the debris in. Is that something possible?
Call Waste Management.
What do you think?
Waste
A
Management.
gentleman, they're repairing a house and wanted a dumpster to put the debris in.
If they put it out at the road, DOT will pick it up.
Okay?
Separate from the.
I mean, there will be no cost
All right.
whatsoever. That'd be the most cost-effective approach.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I heard Ms. Robinson talking about, the block grant money for wheelchair, ramps, bars, and a few things. Is it anything for others who FEMA's not giving them the help at all? I mean, they've gone through a PO process. Any money out there for, citizens, anything out there?
Not that I know of for
No.
individual assistance.
Maybe, I mean, that may be some of the that they may be recontacting the folks. I don't know where that falls in.
Well, I know that's on housing. If they're not able to return to their homes,
No, they're
Oh,
there,
that
they're in the
program.
homes, but a lot of them have applied last year for the Lumber River, I guess for house repair and winterization.
right.
So,
That was a specific grant that, there was a limited amount of funds and only able to help so many people, so.
so no
But
more,
hopefully those opportunities will be coming again in the coming year, so I don't know, but as far as immediate funding, I'm not aware of any right now.
well, these folks applied last year and they didn't get anything, and so now FEMA came in, the storm came in, it just made things
Matters
worse.
worse.
And they're giving some money, but not enough. So someone doing appeals now, they're gonna have to appeal, but.
Okay.
And again, if you would check, Mr. Martin, I know that the housing and all went through, but it could be that there was other things that attached with that.
Can I, and can I just email you these folks and their numbers, cause I'm.
That'll be fine.
And if things call,
Yeah, that'd be fine.
all right,
Please do.
I'll send it to you.
Got a motion to adjourn by.
I second that one.
You got some more there?
Mr. Britt, I
Yes,
apologize.
ma'am, I'm sorry.
We have to have a citizen that is signed up to address the board.
Okay.
Mr. Hayes.
Yes, sir, Ms. Hayes.
When the crowd America team came and asked the commissioners to use the front to move the flagpoles, Robert Manzuro and myself, they went around. The Woodmen of the World paid for that. We thought we had enough money to pay for the stone. We didn't have enough money, and I think the county picked up on that, and I appreciate that. But every year, if I'm correct, Mr. Martin, was set aside for September the 11th. Last year, because of weather, we postponed it to later and got a future date, which I asked commissioners for. This year, we want to do the same, but in working with what Mr. Peterson said, we want to work because we put the stone there to block. And any person that's in law enforcement, rescue, or any type of emergency that gets killed in the line of duty, their name goes down there. And so we have planned and to ask you folks when, and I just happened to got with Mr. Martin, I didn't think about it this morning, Leah, about what was on the calendar coming up, so we could do that. All I'm asking is that we still work together as Mr. Martin and Proud America, which is now Proud Bladen, that we can work together and have what we had sat down and talked about, not Mr. Martin, but the Proud team, was having this time to honor Kevin. And that's Mr. Martin, and I appreciate that, but that was the subject that I was gonna bring up.
Well, I would suggest that you talk to Kay and Glenn, because Glenn, that's the reason I want to put closer to it today. I don't think they won't, I think they've had enough. She called and asked.
That's why we're waiting.
I think they've had enough, because Glenn didn't come to ours in Blainburg.
Right.
He said that he couldn't.
But that right now is in the working and talking. Is all I'm asking, that we work together. And we definitely not going to put her through anything else or those kids through anything else. But we are, our plans are, as soon as they finalize, to do that, but we're still gonna have the crowd blading between now and Christmas. That's
So I
something.
was just trying to get, the county could pay for the stone. I mean, I don't know where is that a problem? I mean,
Well, it don't want, it's not a problem with me, but I don't want you to come up later and say, well, we did this and we did that.
I just want the stone up. I don't want the credit. I think the county should put the stone up there.
Well, I'll agree with that too, if you want to pay for it, but I think we get the same stone, the same stone.
Well, that's what I asked Greg to do.
And I'm asking that we work together on this.
I
have
think
no
it
problem
sounds
with
great.
that. Ma'am?
I think that sounds good.
Well, I'm sure Greg was gonna talk to the broker people before he went and bought the stone and stuff. I just wanna make sure it was in place. Cause he's from Blainburg and he worked Blaine County and Columbus County.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman,
What you gonna do?
Dr. Mongoins asked a question about additional funding. I have a note here, the North Carolina Rivers Housing Foundation has a grant application program for up to $1,500 for those that are impacted by the storm. North Carolina Realtors Housing Foundation.
So, can you can email that to me?
Yeah,
But
I can get it to
I
you.
mean, but that, I mean, I'm not trying to do out there on the street.
It'll be subsequent thing.
Right.
I'll help, but I.
And the deadline is November,
1,500.
the deadline to apply is November 30th.
Some of them are roofs, some of them are their floors, 1,500.
Yeah, well, you know, this is some
So
extra
you
money.
said to, I mean, you said to them.
Yeah, I got you.
It's a whole lot more than that. They normally allow them about $7,000. That's free.
We got a motion to.
I second that.
We got a second. Mr. Cogdill, all in favor, say aye. Aye. So moved. Have a good evening, everybody.